Mark from Microsoft. I'd like to kick off the discussion with Eric. And my very simple question to you is, as an advisor to big businesses and governments, where are the business opportunities?
Thank you, Manoj, and thank you for inviting me here. It's first it's a very impressive discussion, and also a very impressive will from the Indian government and also from Europe, but from the Indian government to get into the digital wave. That's for a citizen from a slow-moving country, very impressive. But once I've said that, what we believe truly at McKinsey is that every company, every citizen, every consumer, in every sector of the economy, every sector of the society is now being taught by digital. Who could have thought a few years ago that agriculture would be a key target for digital? So we are now really in a world where consumer and citizens and some companies are more advanced than the rest of the economy. And that has been touched by several people. So there is, on one hand, people pushing, people more advanced. On the other hand, the gap, the divide that has been mentioned several times. So there are opportunities, I would say, in the tech scene, where all these technologies are basically key areas for investment and development, and also on the divide itself, because the divide in itself basically represents a huge opportunity. So that's basically how I would frame the discussion. Then, second thing, we should not talk about technology anymore, but more about technologies. So you've seen the report that we issued on 12 technologies in India. It's also mirroring a report that we've done on the whole, basically, world, where we say 12 technologies, that would be mobile, big data, Internet of Things, and everything. 12 technologies are representing a huge potential if they are pushed to the total. So let's speak about technology and the tipping point and the exponential power of combining the technology in an economy where basically mobile, digital payment, security, and the big data can be combined into something where there is an exponential virtuous circle. So that's my view.
Thank you very much, Eric. And Mark from Microsoft, where does Microsoft fit in all of this?
Well, actually, thank you for working with us to set this up here, and the ambassador made very kind words about our CEO, Sachin Nadella, who I have to say, in the year he's been CEO, he's made a big difference in helping our company change for the better. It's dependent on his vision and his personality, and he is also infectious when he talks about the prospects for India. We, like some other companies mentioned by the minister, have more employees in India than any other country outside the U.S. And between the developers and researchers, we were attracted by the talent, the expertise in software and services. So it's very fertile market for us to grow. And we, for both the EU and India, we invest very heavily, and we want and need the Digital India and Digital Single Market initiatives to succeed, because we're here in both regions to stay. Our investment is continuous and growing. For example, in India, we'll be opening 3 major data centers this year, and the opportunities that even that kind of infrastructure creates is important not only for our 10,000 plus Indian partners, but also for our European partners. If I could take an example, one of the other sponsors today is SAP. SAP's enterprise business applications are certified on Microsoft's cloud, which isn't the case for all cloud infrastructure. By expanding our infrastructure in India, that also provides additional opportunity for SAP and its customers in India. So that's how we fit in some of the bigger picture commercially, we also are active in both regions in promoting startup activity and digital skills training, which I know is an important part of both the initiatives in Digital India and Digital Single Market. In fact, I should properly welcome you here in this space. This part of this Microsoft facility is dedicated to a public-private partnership with the Brussels region government. The local government puts in 250,000 euros per year to this space, where you're sitting right now is usually filled with students, young people who are learning not just technical skills, but business skills, which is so important to start up a business and create new jobs. So we're very intimately involved in those activities, which I think are of mutual interest with the governments in India and the EU.
What would you say are the mistakes in the digital agenda that the European Union have made or suffered over the years, which India could learn from?
I think that it's, as I said already, talking about things like identity. People who follow this in Europe don't assume that India needs to learn from Europe. What brings me to a meeting like this is the need for us both to be partners in a global enterprise, and I really mean that. I wouldn't say it to representatives of every country. But the second thing I would say is, let me answer a different question, which is, what are the European mistakes I perceive? But when you look at them, and you read Arthur Koestler, the sleepwalkers and so on, you see that these are the mistakes human beings make about technology change all the time in every culture. The first is, we slice up the problem. And so we get worried about data privacy over here without realizing that you won't get learning analytics without a more mature attitude to privacy. So we slice up the problem instead of looking at the whole sausage, the whole vision. What can our society be like if digital changes it everywhere and society remains in power? The second mistake we make is, because it's different, we kind of think it could be aspirational, but we're kind of afraid. And I have to say that although I wish that my people would do comms the way the viral video on net neutrality has been done in India, the fact that it sells unanswerably well does not mean that that's the right approach. When I started as a really young trade official, the wisest thing anybody said to me, this was a guy who came out of building the gap in the 40s, he said, never say that you're in favour of a principle. This is a British thing, so lots of principles in his head, but not in his discourse. Free trade, we don't believe in free trade, he said. If you talk about free trade, and I think net neutrality is the same, firstly, you can't define it, and secondly, you provoke opposition. So it's open trade. And I have to say, I think, and it's the open internet, it's not everything free. So the second error that human beings make is they think if it's new, I'm worried, and if I'm worried, I'll go back to first principles, and then I'll be absolutist. We have to be very modest as we feel our way across the river towards this digital future. There are many other mistakes, but maybe I'll leave it with those two.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Pia. I'm from Think Young. We're a non-profit organization that focuses on young people. So far, we have offices in Brussels, Geneva, and Hong Kong. One of our main projects is the Entrepreneurship School, where we invite young people to get inspired by successful entrepreneurs. This year, we're actually going to be opening an entrepreneurship school in India as well, in Gurgaon. And my question here is that you've spoken about the roles of the government and about businesses as well in creating this digital India. I would like to know what your thoughts are on the role of young people in India creating this digital India.
I will not take the questions I don't know how to answer. But I may speak a bit about entrepreneurship and startups, because I truly think that this is an area where EU and India can collaborate quite significantly. And I think that there is first, the European startup, they're always looking on the other side of the Atlantic. And I think it's true that the US are quite advanced in terms of technology, but I think with the quality of the human capital that you can find in Europe and in India, there is a huge potential for this startup, especially the ones around mobility, security, big data and analytics, artificial intelligence, to find a new target on the Indian market, and vice versa. So I would say there is a huge potential for entrepreneurship on both sides, and probably there is a huge, I don't know if it's a word in English, but enrichment around human capital and knowledge capital on both campuses.
So I'll have a go at all the questions. Let me add to that one. If there is an area that we've discussed this afternoon where there is no current Europe-India dialogue, it is around the specific needs of startups, accelerators and incubators. 5 years ago that was true in Europe as well. Now we've set up a network called Startup Europe, so maybe one of the things, Ambassador, we should think about is having a Europe-India startup network started up. And secondly, on the FTA, the answer I think is that we want to relaunch it, clearly. I'm not the negotiator, so I'm only speaking for those who are. But I think that the politics, we've had to change on both sides, so now we're full steam ahead, I would say. And then if I can address the point about globalization, local content and so on, I would like to start from the point of view that open trade at the global level remains a must. The internet economy is irretrievably global, and therefore the challenge for leading economies and governments and countries is to identify and manage collectively in advance the things which will otherwise trip us up. And what trips us up? I mean, things like data protection have tripped us up in the transatlantic economy recently. The second thing, therefore, is in anticipating how to manage it, we have to go back to the sort of Bretton Woods vision, which is that global trade opening has mutual benefit. Not balanced, not quoted, but mutual benefit. And in the internet economy, in Europe, why do people fret about big multinationals that are successful? Because they're worried that the pie is growing, but somebody else is still eating all of it. And this can be about non-ICT stuff, the tax debate, which the OECD, I think, is currently working with the G20 to try to fix. But it can also be very specific things of the sort that the Competition Commissioner has been announcing action on today. I happen to believe that issues around content and localization are, on the one hand, legitimate tools in a national policy box. We remain sovereign. On the other hand, I think history does show that these are tools that you should not use too much, because they're very sharp and they might cut you or fall on your toe. I don't think it would be necessary to go in further detail, but I don't think there's one drop of the poison doesn't poison everything. 10 drops might, and what is the poison? These are real issues, but in the internet economy, I think Europe lives it as well. If we get the data protection wrong, if we deal with health record transfer wrongly, we will lose out. But wrongly can be on either extreme. A free-for-all will kill trust, nobody will use the instruments. Over-regulation will kill the business model. Somewhere in the middle, and this is like the net neutrality debate, somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot. But it's never been harder in my professional career to identify what is the right level of regulation, because we're trying now to create a framework for rapidly emerging technology. So this is unprecedentedly difficult. The people who were managing the Uruguay round, for example, in the 80s, or the creation of trade liberalization after the Second World War, they were dealing largely with known stuff. And today we're in a really unknown area, which I think genuinely requires more cooperation between business and government to find the right answer. But it's not black and white. I don't think we can say, if you do this, you are wrong. I think it's a question of trying to find an upstream consensus of a bandwidth within which we acknowledge each other's right to operate.
Well, I'm not going to comment on the trade issues there, just on the entrepreneurship and startup activity, which I think your question was directed what more could be done with the Digital India initiative. And I'm not familiar enough with how much is being done there. It is consistent though with both what my company and our sector is doing to promote entrepreneurship, both in supporting Startup Europe, and I think that's a great idea to combine the European initiative with something in India. But also we partnered early on with Startup America, and that's been a very successful effort. So those are certainly great models to learn from and build on for Digital India.
For the first time in the last two budgets, the full budget and the budget that was presented in the interim budget, startup as a category has been recognized. And in fact, this budget goes a step further. Overall 10,000 crores, which is about $2 billion, were allocated for all medium and small businesses. But this budget has done a sectoral allocation of 1,000 crores for a startup fund, and announced
crores is what?
about $200 million, which is and announced what is called the Atal Innovation Mission. So, and this fund is intended to be like a fund of funds, which is then going to attract more capital. So, we imagine this 200 million to be at least $1 billion available to the startup technology startup fund.
Hi, my name is Animesh Pathak. I'm a research scientist at INRIA in Paris. The question I wanted to pose was more to the Director General of DG Connect, in the sense that one way of collaboration which happens between the EC and India or any two countries is bilateral research projects. The H2020 program, for example, has the notion of co-funding from individual countries and stuff, but I don't think, at least I don't see India as a preferred partner of any sort for the EU or vice versa. Perhaps I'm missing stuff over here, but I think given the rapid rate of innovation in ICT, that could be a place where this would help, so industrial and academic partners could learn quickly across countries.
So just very briefly, we make no distinctions. The public funding at EU level for research is open to everybody. Even although we may change our mind on this in years ahead, countries unlike India, which would love to cooperate and do cooperate with us, but don't let us cooperate with them. So Indian scientists, researchers, institutions and corporates are very welcome to come, for example, in the middle of October to Lisbon to be part of our two-day event laying out the 2016-17 work programs and getting to meet people around the IT research and see what's of interest. Then the question comes, do they bring own funding? Is it government sharing? Is it, as we see in some other transcontinental corporations, that it's actually researchers and innovators working for Indian institutions but based in Europe who don't participate? All models are open, but we are genuinely interested to take that further. And what's different between Horizon 2020 and previous research strategies is that it really is innovation as well. We're much closer to the market, so people who've thought of EU research as for the universities might have been right in the past, but they're definitely wrong now.
Thank you. And can I ask Ambassador Puri to have the last word, if appropriate?
Manoj, thank you. Manoj, thank you very much. Thank you for this very enriching discussion, and Robert, I want to thank you particularly. You know, the gentleman is no longer sitting there. Otherwise, I can assure you, you could have let him carry on, and I would have been very glad to answer him on each and every single one of the points, because this happens to be areas in which one has worked literally one's whole life. But I want to draw your attention to a few big broad brush subject matters stemming from what you said, collaborative research. Look, our meeting here today is not about India-EU politics, global governance and so on and so forth. You're all very welcome to come to those discussions. We are all part and parcel of this. If you notice, the Director General mentioned one M word and deliberately left out the other. Let me say it, multilateralism. It has its place in it. So, you know, this puts an end to this thing, and I'm taking the cue from the European Union. After all, as a collegium of government representatives, they take the decision. So, you know, that's the way the world is structured. But talking about startups, you know, I want to thank you very much for this acronym. We are very much fond of them at the moment, and this is certainly going to be one of those that we are storing away for a possible get-together with the European Union as and when that happens. FTA, for the fact that it was mentioned, I want to tell you, the issue of the FTA came up in discussions between the then President of the European Council in November of last year in Brisbane when they met with our Prime Minister, and the President raised this particular subject, and our Prime Minister said the following to him. I can almost quote this verbatim. He said, look, there are winds of change in India, there is political will, try us, and we are there. We hope that we will take these things forward. I have no doubt in my mind, I see that there is commonality. But I'm afraid one of the sticky areas that we'll have to somehow get over is in the area which is being debated here today, which is in the digital area. After all, we have huge and big number of issues on the subject matter of mobility. That's a simple one. My colleagues from TCS and Mahindra and others here will tell you that. But there's this other huge issue which has cropped up in the last few years, that of data security. And I think we need to find ways and means of being able to bridge this. I think we have tremendous opportunities. Mr. Director General, you mentioned that nobody here is going to be rolling out 700,000 kilometers of optical cables, etc., etc. But your companies certainly are going to be part and parcel of all of this, and we are very happy that that's happening, because that's really the way things are going. We have, as I mentioned to you, huge unmet demand, and the hugest perhaps in the world, anywhere in the world, is in India. We are the largest demand market in the world. Demographics is certainly part of it, but demand driven by both demographics and the fact that we are a democracy. So you can't just say that the city of Mumbai will have everything and nobody else. It has to be with everyone, which is what gives us this tremendous amount of demand which is there for everyone to participate in. Yes, the gentleman was right. There are rules and regulations which come in, which respect and which take into account exigencies of particular times. You mentioned sovereignty, etc. So some of those local content requirements, etc., they come in. But all countries do these particular things at different times. Whether they are right or wrong, usually time gives you the best answers to it. But we, as he mentioned himself, have that very good ability, the ability to self-correct. And that's the great strength of India, our democratic credentials, and our openness, an open society approach to things, including our judiciary, which allows us to do this particular thing. So, Manoj, to you and to India Incorporated, many, many thanks. Really grateful for this.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.